Subscribe to my channel for more powerful life stories like this one. I can still hear the sound of the rain that night, soft, steady, tapping gently against the windows. Normally that rhythm eased my mind, but not that night. That night, it only made the emptiness inside my home echo louder. My name's Daniel. I'm 38 years old and had been married to my wife Claire for 9 years. She was the kind of woman who could fill a room just by stepping into it. Bright, magnetic, effortlessly charming. For a long time her presence felt like sunlight. Until one day it didn't. It began with small things. Missed dinners. Sudden girls' nights that never seemed to include the same friends twice. I didn't want to become the suspicious husband, so I brushed the doubts aside. She deserved to have fun, I told myself. Maybe I was just being overcautious. But then came the inconsistencies. Phone batteries that conveniently died. Stories that didn't match. Nights where she supposedly fell asleep at Olivia's. Every time I brought it up, she'd roll her eyes, press a kiss to my cheek and say, "Daniel, you're overthinking. Don't be paranoid." That Friday she mentioned a work party at a downtown lounge. "It's networking," she said, slipping into a black dress I'd never seen before. One that made my chest tighten, but not from admiration this time. It was a dull, twisting unease. She left smelling of jasmine and wine, and I stood by the window watching her car disappear down the street, a heavy feeling growing in my gut. By midnight she still wasn't home. Her phone went straight to voicemail. 1 a.m. passed. Then 2. I stopped pacing and sat near the window staring into the dark. Love can make you blind. It can make you ignore what's right in front of you. I've been doing that for months. Around 3:30, headlights swept across the driveway. A car stopped, and I saw her stumble out laughing with someone. A tall man in a gray jacket. He leaned in close, his hand grazing her waist before pulling her into a long hug. Too long. When she finally reached the door, her makeup was smudged, her eyes unfocused as she fumbled through her purse for the keys. I watched her through the peephole, my heartbeat steady but cold. I didn't open the door. I turned the lock instead. For a second I thought she'd call my name softly, but she didn't. She knocked hard over and over. "Daniel, open the door. It's freezing." Her voice cracked through the rain, sharp with desperation. I stayed silent. After a while her tone changed. "Are you serious? You're locking me out? You're insane." Then silence. She eventually left. I didn't know where, maybe back to him, maybe to a friend's. All I knew was that for the first time in months the house felt still. I slept barely 2 hours before my alarm went off. My hand shook as I picked up my phone. 10 missed calls, 3 voicemails I didn't want to hear. Around noon she called again. Against every instinct I answered. Her voice was trembling. "Daniel, please don't hang up." Something in her tone made my stomach sink. "Where are you?" I asked. "At the hospital," she whispered. "There was an accident." My pulse froze. "What accident?" "Ethan, the man you saw last night. He offered to drive me home after I couldn't get in. We got hit by a truck on 5th Street. He's gone, Daniel." For a moment I couldn't breathe. The rain outside had stopped, but my chest felt like it was collapsing inward. "Are you okay?" was all I managed to say. "Physically, yes," she said, her voice trembling. "But I can't stop thinking. If you had opened the door." I wanted to be angry. To remind her of every lie, every excuse. That she'd chosen to be out with another man while I sat home questioning my sanity. But hearing her break like that, the weakness in her tone, something inside me cracked. That night stopped being just about betrayal. It became about everything we'd both neglected. Everything that had quietly decayed between us. "I'm sorry, Daniel," she whispered. "I don't even know what I was doing anymore." Then came a sound I hadn't heard in years. Her sobs, raw and unguarded, bleeding through the receiver. I drove to the hospital in silence. The city looked too bright for how I felt inside. When I entered her room, she was sitting up, her arm in a sling, a bruise darkening her temple. She looked small, fragile, almost unfamiliar. Our eyes met, and neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally she whispered, "You didn't answer my calls." I nodded slowly. "You weren't supposed to be with him." Tears gathered in her eyes. "I know. It wasn't what you think. Nothing happened. He was just kind." I felt invisible. That word, invisible, hit hard. 'Cause somewhere she wasn't wrong. I had been distant, drowning myself in work, believing that paying bills and staying quiet made me a good husband. I hadn't noticed when our conversations turned into silence, when she stopped laughing, when our love became polite coexistence. You could have talked to me, I said quietly. Instead, you went looking for someone who made you feel seen. Do you know what that does to a man? She closed her eyes. Yes, she whispered. I do now. The weeks that followed blurred into slow fragments, hospital visits, awkward dinners, long silences. When she came home, we moved around each other like strangers. The house felt heavy, holding its breath. Some nights, I'd wake to her crying quietly in the other room. Other nights, I'd find her by the window, staring into nothing, lost between guilt and regret. One evening, she set her phone on the counter and said, I deleted his number. I didn't reply, and I signed up for therapy for me. For us, if you still want that. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the woman I had once loved hiding beneath exhaustion and shame. But trust doesn't rebuild overnight. It grows back slowly, in the quiet space between effort and forgiveness. Weeks turned into months. We started talking again about groceries, bills, work. Then the deeper things, why we stopped touching, why we both drifted apart. Some nights ended in tears, others in silence. But at least we were talking again. One Sunday morning, she poured coffee and slid a mug toward me. Do you think we'll ever be who we were? She asked softly. I took a long breath. No, I said. Her face fell until I added, but maybe we can be something new. Something real. Her lips quivered into a fragile smile. I'll take that. It wasn't some storybook recovery. There were still days when anger found me out of nowhere. When I'd remember the rain, the knock I ignored. But I'd also remember her trembling voice the next day. The one that shattered the wall between us. Months later, we visited the small memorial her coworkers made for Ethan. She placed a single white flower beside his photo. On the drive home, she said quietly, I think he saved us without even knowing it. I didn't answer. But deep down I knew she was right. Because if that accident hadn't happened, we might never have faced what was dying inside us. Now, a year later, the sound of rain still brings that night back. Only this time it doesn't hurt. It reminds me that love isn't about fireworks or perfect apologies. Sometimes it's just two broken people choosing to rebuild from the ashes. Claire still keeps that black dress tucked away in her closet. She says it reminds her of who she never wants to be again. And I keep the memory of that locked door. Not as punishment but as a lesson. That love left untended dies quietly. And forgiveness, when it finally comes, doesn't erase the pain. It just teaches you how to live with it, without letting it poison what's left.